Conflicts and cohesion. Although the LGBTQ plus community has many of the same struggles within their group, there does not seem to be a very united front. One of the conflicts is discrimination against one another within this group. It is said that causes that once united members of the LGBTQ community in response to substandard treatment is now being mirrored by members of the same community using masculinity, body type, and race. Something that brings them together is the discrimination they face as minorities, in addition to the struggles that come with being part of the LGBT community on a daily basis.
Hi, my name is Emily Blaha, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about resiliency and resistance within our community. So this is Daniela Carter. She's an amazing representative to show the resiliency of Black LGBTQ adults. Daniela is a Black transgender woman who grew up in the foster care system. She spoke at the TED Talk convention about how life was growing up being Black and transgender. Once her foster family discovered that she was transgender, she was thrown out. She became part of the many homeless LGBTQ adults and youth. She became a sex worker to make a living. She was bullied all throughout school but refused to give up. She finished high school and started her own transgender foundation called the Gender Global. The Gender Global uses donations to provide homeless LGBTQ youth with resources and support. She was also a national ambassador for the Human Rights Campaign, and she won an Emmy for the T Word documentary that she was in that followed transgender youth. Next is Rustin Bayard. Casey touched on him a little bit, but I'm going to go into a little bit further detail on why he had resiliency. Rustin Bayard was a gay civil rights activist. He was arrested in 1953 for a homosexual act. At the time, homosexuality was illegal in parts of the US. At the time, Rustin was labeled as a pervert and an immoral influence by other politicians at the time. Despite being ridiculed, Rustin went on to help lead the civil rights movement. He preached and promoted nonviolence. He even helped Martin Luther King Jr. With his Southern Christians Leadership Conference. He helped organize the March for Jobs and Freedom in Washington in 1963. After the passing of civil rights legislation in 1964, he continued to fight for job opportunities for Black Americans. He also focused on advocating for gay and lesbian causes. He shows resiliency through his fight for Black Americans, even through the public hate and homophobia. In 2003, President Barack Obama awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Some people who show resistance would be Marsha P. Johnson and all the LGBTQ members at the Stonewall riots. Marsha P. Johnson was a transgender woman and one of the faces of the Stonewall riots and the gay rights movement. On June 28, 1969, the Stonewall riots began. It was an uprising against the New York Police Department because of their constant targeting of the LGBTQ community. The community was constantly hassled, arrested, and roasted. The uprising began after the police returned to the Stonewall Inn for a second time in 2 days. The inn was a place for the LGBTQ people to feel safe, and it was a place they could express themselves. Marsha was one of the people that the police forced out of the inn and frisked the night before. The police returned the next night and set the Stonewall Inn on fire. The whole community came together and protested for several days. This event helped spark the gay rights movement and pride. The community joined together and resisted the oppression that was being placed on them. Marsha in 1972 performed all around the world after the riots, and with her popular drag theater company, Hot Peaches. Marsha P. Johnson and the LGBTQ community fought police and social norms in the gay rights movement. Another one is Mary Jones. She was born in 1803 in New York. She was one of the first transgender people of color in U.S. history. She became a well-known person in the LGBTQ community due to her resistance to the gender, social, and racial roles. Back in the 1800s, the word transgender didn't exist. They were all known as perverts. At the time, the punishment of same-sex intercourse between two men was life imprisonment. She was placed on trial in 1836 for stealing a white man's wallet. The trial got a lot of attention because it was so rare to see an openly Black transgender person for the time. Mary Jones was arrested again in 1942 for being a deceiver with a desire for interracial sex. Jones shows resistance by not caring about the consequences of being Black and transgender. Her sexual identity got her into a lot of trouble, but she still resisted the social norms to be herself. And the last one is James Baldwin. He was born in Harlem, New York in 1924. He grew up writing and expressing himself through poetry. James Baldwin experienced a lot of racial discrimination in the US. He felt that he wasn't able to write freely about his experiences. In 1948, he left the US to travel all around Europe. While in Europe, he felt free to write about his racial experiences in America. He spoke out against segregation and took part in the civil rights movement. He became friends with Medgar Evers, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, and Lorraine Hansberry. As these friends passed, it began to fuel his writing about race and race relations in America. While doing so, he raised a lot of awareness of racial and sexual oppression that he experienced in America. He believed that sexuality was fluid and shouldn't be divided into strict categories. He was very open with his sexuality and resisted sexual, social, and racial norms. And then lastly, we have our recommendations to the agency.
Speak thoroughly on this population and keep up to date on current events.
Publicly announce and post the current available resources for this population. Recommended resources are Affinity African American Office of Gay Concerns, Black and Latino LGBTQ Coalition, and much more.
Acknowledge Gay Pride Month and mental health awareness. Allow the company to dress in pride clothing, which allows a safe space for equality.
To ensure that the agency's workforce is as diverse as the community it's meant to serve.